Gasset writes, the masked man would never have accepted authority external to himself had not his surroundings violently forced him to do so. As today, his surroundings do not so force him. So there are no forces. So if there are no forces, he doesn't make any. He doesn't make an appeal to outside authority. The everlasting masked man, true to his character, ceases to appeal to other authority and feels himself lord of his own existence. Let us recall that at the start we distinguished the excellent man from the common man. So now we're making a distinction between the excellent man. Later he'll show that the excellent man is the noble man, and the common man, the masses, and the masked man. So that there's going to be this antithetical relationship. By saying that the former, that's the excellent man, is the one who makes great demands of himself, and the latter is one who makes no demands of himself. Okay. Now, what we need to see is what Gasset has done, because it's very, very subtle, and without sort of an in-depth look at how he's made this transition, which again has been a very subtle transition, you might not understand the importance of this transition from talking about sort of the social distinctions between the masses of today and the masses in previous centuries, and then transitioning from the masses to the particular individual, right? The excellent man, the common man, the masked man. So he's made a transition, right? And it's analogous. So we have the old way, and we have the social conditions for the old way. We have the new way, and we have the social conditions for the new way. But we have the old man, right? And now we have the new man, right? This new man is the masked man. And the old man is what he refers to as the excellent. Right? So we have the excellent man, who's a representation of the old model, the old way. And we have the masked man, who's a representation of the new model, the new way. What's the distinction between the two of these? Well, Gasset says, and this is very, 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 very subtle, right? So it's important that you get this. As a product of this model, wherein there were limitations on society as a whole, right? The dependency, the limitations, the burden, the trials on society as a whole, the excellent man imposes similar obligations on himself. So that there are obligations that he imposes on himself. So your desire to go back to school and complete your GED, or your AA, or your BA, or your master's, or your doctorate, is an obligation that you impose on yourself. You don't have to do that. Right? You don't have to do that. You can say, I'm not interested in doing that. It doesn't have to be education-based. Your desire to go out and start your own business, and hopefully one day have a Fortune 500 company, or just one day to have a company where you employ 50 people, which is a huge company, is not something that you have to do, right? It is something that you've imposed on yourself. This imposition on yourself is an obligation. You've created an obligation for yourself, right? The excellent man creates, according to Gasset, obligations for himself, and also for women, right? The excellent man, the excellent woman creates obligations for him or herself. The masked man does not create obligations for himself. What the masked man does is he creates obligations for others, right? He creates obligations for others. I have something that I want, and you have to give it to me. I have something that I need, and you have to provide it for me. I have a desire that I want met, and you have to satisfy it for me. You can see the extreme distinction between the excellent man and the masked man. The excellent man being a byproduct of the old model, wherein social conditions were limited. As a product of that society, he has recognized a limitation on himself. I have recognized that in order for me to attain what I want, I have to become a bit stoic, right? I have to be austere in a way. I can't be impulsive and demanding. So I limit myself, I restrict myself from the excesses that are out there in life, from the pleasures that are out there that would otherwise distract me. And rather, I set limitations for myself, I become regimented, and I give myself my own obligations, right? And as such, I excel. The masked man, according to Gasset, refuses to do that. Not only will he not have external sources or outside authority limit himself, just like his social conditions won't, he won't impose limitations on his own, on himself. He won't impose limitations on himself, right? So that neither will the masked man allow others to impose limitations on himself, but he will not impose limitations on himself either. So now if we go back and read this section again, this will make more sense. The masked man would never have accepted authority external to himself had not his surroundings violently forced him to do so. And today, his surroundings do not so force him. The everlasting masked man, true to his character, ceases to appeal to other authority and feels himself lord of his own existence. Let us recall that at the start we distinguished the excellent man from the masked man by saying that the former, the excellent man, is one who makes great demands on himself, and the latter, one who makes no demands on himself, but contents himself with what he is and is delighted with himself. So we understand now definitely how this relationship corresponds. The excellent man is a product of a society, of an era in which social obligations formed society. Thus, he is an individual in which his own obligations to himself form his character. The masked man is a product of a society wherein social demands create obligations on others. Thus, he is a man in which his demands create obligations on others. And thus, the distinction between the excellent man and the masked man. So you can't fully understand the distinction that the Gasset makes between the excellent man and the masked man without also recognizing how he relates the corresponding distinction in centuries. The 19th century onward and before and up until the 18th century. Okay, so we make more sense now of the distinction between the excellent man and the masked man. Now, he then draws the distinction and he lets us know that the excellent man is the noble man, right? And the title of the chapter, again, is Noble Life and Common Life, or Effort and Inertia, right? So there's still a lot that is yet to be explained. We still don't know what noble life is. We still don't know what effort is, and we still don't know what inertia is. But we'll understand this momentarily. But he says that the noble man is the excellent man. Now, let's listen to a section. He says, hence, he does not look upon the necessity of serving as an impression, right? The excellent man does not look upon the necessity, the requirement of serving as an impression. When by chance such necessity is lacking, he grows restless. And here's the important. When there is no service to be had, when there is no obligation, he grows restless and invents some new standard. He puts an obligation on himself. He gives himself something to do that he otherwise would not have to do. Invents some new standard, more difficult, more stringent, and with which to coerce himself. This is life lived as a discipline, right? To live your life disciplined, right? To be a very disciplined, regimented individual. This is to live your life disciplined. The noble life, what he says. Nobility is defined by demands it makes on us, right? This is important. Nobility is defined by demands it makes on us, not by demands it makes on others. So according to Gasset, this is now, we're answering the first part. What is nobility? According to Gasset, nobility is the demands that it makes on us, not our ability to make demands on others.